February 7th, 1943, North Atlantic. The water was 28 degrees, cold enough to kill a man in 4 minutes. Commander Robert Mason stood on the bridge of USS Eagle, watching 60 men drown in the oil-black water. Their screams echoed across the waves carried on the winter wind like the cries of ghosts already dead. "Help us. Please, God. Help us." But Mason gave the order no captain wants to give. The order that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "We stay on station." The men drowned, all 60 of them. Their voices got quieter, weaker, until there was nothing but the sound of waves and wind and the low rumble of Eagle's engines holding position. But that decision, that terrible haunted decision, would save 2,000 lives before sunrise. This is the story of how it happened. But first you need to understand something. You need to know what was at stake. Because 30 years later, in 1973, an old man in his 70s sat in a small diner in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Across from him sat another old man. One wore a Navy veteran cap. The other spoke with a thick German accent, and they were both crying. The American said, "I almost killed you that night." The German replied, "You should have, but you saved my life instead, twice." This is their story, the story of how a haunted American commander and a brilliant German U-boat captain fought the deadliest game of cat and mouse in World War II history, and how American values, not just American weapons, won the battle. But it starts 3 years earlier. Before the war, before the ghosts, when Robert Mason was just a merchant marine captain trying to do right by his crew. November 1940, Atlantic Ocean, the SS Liberty Star, a cargo vessel carrying wheat from Baltimore to Liverpool. Mason commanded her. He was 39 years old then, 15 years at sea. Good record, good crew, good man. He had a wife back home, Sarah. They'd been married 8 years, no children yet, but they were trying. Sarah wrote him letters, long ones. She'd tell him about the garden, about the neighbors, about the new radio show she liked. And at the end of every letter, the same words: "Come home safe, Robert. The world needs good men like you." Mason would read those letters in his cabin at night. Cup of coffee in one hand, letter in the other. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. He'd been drinking it that way since he was 16. His father taught him. "A real sailor drinks his coffee black," his father had said. "Tastes the ocean that way." The Liberty Star crossed the Atlantic in November 1940. War had started in Europe. Germany was sinking ships, but America wasn't in the war yet. Neutral. The merchant marines carried cargo anyway. Someone had to feed England. Mason took precautions. Zigzag course, radio silence. Lookouts posted 24 hours. He'd studied the U-boat tactics, read every report. He knew the Germans hunted at night, surfaced, used their deck guns to save torpedoes. He thought he was ready. November 18th, 1940, 2:47 in the morning. The torpedo hit the engine room without warning. No alarm, no lookout cry, just a massive explosion that lifted the stern of the Liberty Star 6 feet out of the water and broke her back like a twig. Mason was asleep in his cabin. The explosion threw him out of his bunk. He hit the deck hard, tasted blood, smelled burning oil. He ran to the bridge in his underwear and boots. The ship was already listing 15 degrees to port. The engine room was flooding. The radio operator was screaming into the mic. "Mayday, Mayday, SS Liberty Star, torpedoed position, 52 degrees north, 30 degrees west. We are sinking." Mason grabbed the ship's intercom, tried to sound calm, tried to sound like a captain. "All hands abandon ship. This is not a drill. Abandon ship. Orderly. Lifeboat stations. Move." But there wasn't time for orderly. The ship was going down fast. Men scrambled up from the crew quarters, some only half-dressed, some barefoot. The lifeboats swung out on their davits. Men climbed in. The boats dropped toward the black water. Mason did a head count. 52 crew, 4 lifeboats, capacity 15 each. The math worked. Everyone would fit. But the math was a lie. The third lifeboat hit the water wrong. Capsized. Dumped 14 men into the Atlantic in November. The water temperature was 34 degrees. The men started screaming immediately. Mason stood on the tilting deck of the Liberty Star and watched his crew die. Some drowned right away. Some held on for a few minutes. Their screams got weaker, then stopped. "Get them out of the water," Mason shouted. "Get them out now." But the other lifeboats were already full, overloaded. If they tried to pull more men aboard, everyone would die. One man was still swimming, young kid, maybe 19, Chinese-American, David Chen from San Francisco. He'd signed on as an engine wiper 3 months ago. First voyage, good kid, quiet, hard worker. Sent money home to his mother every port. David Chen swam toward Mason's lifeboat, the closest one. His face was already turning blue from the cold. But he was strong. He'd been a swimmer in high school. He might make it. Captain David's voice cut through the wind. Captain Help Mason reached over the side of the lifeboat, grabbed for David's hand. Their fingers touched, but David's hand was too cold, too numb. He couldn't grip. Captain David looked up at Mason, right in the eyes, and then David did something Mason would never forget. He took off his life vest, held it up out of the water, gestured toward an older man floating nearby, a man with 3 kids back in Baltimore. "Take care of Tom," David said. "He's got family." And David Chen sank beneath the black water. Didn't come back up. The Liberty Star went down 12 minutes after the torpedo hit. 47 men went into the water. Only 22 survived. David Chen wasn't one of them. Mason sat in the lifeboat and watched the spot where David disappeared. Watched until the sun came up 6 hours later. Watched until the British destroyer picked them up. Watched until he couldn't see the ocean anymore. He never stopped watching. The Navy investigated, standard procedure for any sinking. They interviewed survivors, reviewed Mason's decisions. Read the log. And they concluded what everyone already knew. Commander Mason acted appropriately given the circumstances. No fault assigned. But Mason knew different. He'd been asleep. Asleep when the torpedo hit. If he'd been on the bridge, maybe he would have seen the U-boat. Maybe he could have turned the ship. Maybe David Chen would still be alive. Mason quit the Merchant Marines, went home to Sarah. Tried to forget, but he couldn't. Every night the same dream. David Chen sinking into the black water, looking up at Mason, saying, "Take care of Tom. He's got family." Sarah tried to help. She held him when he woke up screaming, made him coffee, sat with him in the dark. But she couldn't reach the place where the ghost lived. Then December 7th, 1941 happened. Pearl Harbor, America entered the war, and Mason made a decision. He walked into the Navy recruiting office in Baltimore, told them he wanted back in, wanted command. The recruiter looked at his file, Merchant Marine Captain. 15 years experience. They needed men like that. They gave him a commission. Lieutenant Commander. Sent him to training, 6 months learning to command a warship instead of a cargo vessel. Learning sonar, radar, depth charges, gun tactics. And in January 1943, they gave him the USS Eagle, a brand new Fletcher-class destroyer, fresh from the shipyard, 376 feet long, 5 5-inch guns, 10 torpedo tubes, 48 depth charges, crew of 273. Mason stood on the dock in Boston and looked up at his new command. Gray paint, sharp lines, built for war. This wasn't the Liberty Star, this was a weapon. And Mason was going to use it to make sure no one else drowned calling for help. But first he needed a crew. His executive officer was Lieutenant Charlie Watson, age 28, Annapolis graduate, top of his class, eager, smart, maybe too smart. Watson had the book knowledge, the academy training, but he'd never been in combat, never made a decision that cost lives. Watson saluted Mason on the bridge. Sharp, precise, academy perfect. "Commander Mason, Lieutenant Watson, reporting for duty, sir." Mason returned the salute. "At ease, Lieutenant." Mason studied the younger man, saw the confidence, the certainty, the belief that doing things by the book would keep everyone alive. Mason had believed that once too. "You ever lost a man?" Lieutenant Watson blinked. "No, sir. You will. And when you do, you'll understand why we're here." Watson didn't understand, not yet, but he would. The sonar technician was Petty Officer 2nd Class James Rodriguez. Everyone called him Jimmy, age 22, son of a fisherman from Galveston, Texas. Jimmy had grown up on boats. His father had taught him to listen to the ocean. "The sea talks, mijo," his father would say. "You just gotta know how to listen." Jimmy could hear things other sonar operators couldn't. He could tell the difference between a whale and a submarine, between a school of fish and a torpedo, between an American engine and a German one. He was a genius with headphones. Mason met Jimmy in the sonar room. The kid was calibrating equipment, adjusting dials. His headphones hung around his neck. Rodriguez. Mason's voice made Jimmy jump. Sir Jimmy stood at attention, at ease. Mason gestured to the sonar equipment. This is the most important station on the ship. If you can hear them before they hear us, we live. If you can't, we die. Understand? Jimmy swallowed. Yes, sir. Good. Mason turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Trust your ears. Not the screen, not the manual. Your ears. They'll save us all. Jimmy nodded. He didn't fully understand either, but he would. The gunner's mate was William Hawkins. Everyone called him Bull. Age 43, big man, 6'3", 240 pounds, hands like sledgehammers. But gentle eyes, father's eyes. Bull was a World War I veteran. He'd been 18 at Belleau Wood, fought the Germans in the French woods. Seen things no 18-year-old should see. He'd come home with nightmares, with a fear of deep water, with a scar across his ribs from German shrapnel. But the Navy needed experienced men. So Bull re-enlisted, became a gunner's mate, trained kids to load depth charges and fire 5-inch guns. He was patient with them, understanding, because he remembered what it was like to be 18 and terrified. Mason found Bull on the fantail inspecting depth charge racks. Bull straightened when he saw the commander. Sir, Bull. Mason had read the file, knew about Belleau Wood. How many men did you lose in France? Bull's jaw tightened. 32, sir. Out of my platoon of 60. You think about them every day, sir. Good. Mason held Bull's gaze. That means you won't waste lives. That means you'll fight smart. That's why you're here. Bull understood. He'd been carrying ghosts for 25 years. He recognized another haunted man when he saw one. And then there was Seaman Marcus Green, age 18, fresh out of boot camp. This was his first assignment, first ship, first time away from home. Marcus was from Detroit, black kid from a poor neighborhood. His father had died in a factory accident when Marcus was 12. His mother worked 2 jobs to feed Marcus and his 3 younger siblings, but they were still poor, still struggling. Marcus enlisted the day he turned 18, partly for the pay, partly to make his mother proud, partly because he wanted to prove something, prove that a black kid from Detroit could serve his country just like anyone else. He reported to the Eagle with his sea bag over his shoulder and his orders in his pocket. Found Bull Hawkins on deck. Seaman Green reporting for duty, sir. Bull looked at the kid, saw the nervousness, the eagerness, the same look Bull had worn at 18. I'm not sir, kid. I work for a living. Call me Bull. Yes, Bull. You scared, Marcus? Hesitated, then nodded. Yes, Bull. Good. Only stupid people aren't scared. Fear keeps you alive. Bull clapped Marcus on the shoulder. You stay closer to me, kid. I'll teach you how to come home. Marcus would remember those words later. When the ocean was on fire and men were drowning, and he had to choose between fear and duty. On February 2nd, 1943, the Eagle left Boston Harbor. Destination Halifax, Nova Scotia. Mission join convoy HX-237, escort cargo ships across the Atlantic to Liverpool, England. Mason stood on the bridge as they cleared the harbor. Cold wind, gray sky. He poured himself coffee from the bridge pot. Black, no sugar, no cream. Sipped. Let the bitter taste anchor him. Watson approached with a clipboard. Crew ready, sir. All stations manned. Course laid in. Very well. Mason stared at the horizon. Lieutenant, you know what we're carrying in this convoy? Watson checked his notes. Yes, sir. Medical supplies primarily. Penicillin, blood plasma, some ammunition and food. That penicillin will save thousands of Allied soldiers. Those soldiers will go home to their families, have children, live lives. You understand? Watson nodded. Yes, sir. So if we fail, thousands die. If we succeed, thousands live. There's no middle ground in this war, Lieutenant. We save them all, or we save none. Watson felt the weight of that, started to understand what Mason already knew. Command wasn't about giving orders. It was about living with consequences. February 4th, 1943. Halifax, Nova Scotia. The convoy assembled in Bedford Basin. 37 merchant ships, cargo vessels, tankers, old Liberty ships like the one Mason used to command, each one loaded with supplies, each one essential. Mason met with Commodore Andrews, the convoy commander. Andrews was 60, old sailor, white beard, tired eyes. He'd been crossing the Atlantic since 1917, survived the First War, now fighting the Second. Commander Mason. Andrews shook hands. Glad to have Eagle with us. She's a fine ship, thank you, sir. Mason looked at the assembled convoy. 37 ships is a lot to protect. Andrews nodded grimly. Intelligence says there are 12 U-boats waiting for us. Wolfpack Grief, commanded by Kapitän Lieutenant Heinrich Müller. You heard of him, Mason had. Müller was one of Germany's top aces. 47 ships sunk. 1,200 Allied sailors killed. Brilliant tactician, ruthless, cold. I know him, Mason said. How many escorts do we have? 3 destroyers. UHMS Vanguard and HMS Triumph. Andrews sighed. Not enough, but it's what we have. What about air cover? We'll have Canadian planes for the first day, then nothing for 4 days. The Black Pit. Then British planes pick us up near Ireland. The Black Pit. The gap in the middle of the Atlantic, where no land-based aircraft could reach. Where the U-boats ruled. Where convoys died. 4 days, Mason said quietly. 4 days. Andrews put a hand on Mason's shoulder. Keep them alive, Commander. Get my boys to England. Mason wanted to promise. Wanted to say, yes, sir, every ship will make it. But he'd learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. So he just nodded. I'll do my best, sir. February 5th, 1943, 0600 hours. The convoy sailed from Halifax. 37 merchant ships in 9 columns. 4 rows deep, the 3 destroyers prowled the edges. Eagle took the forward, starboard position. Vanguard took port. Triumph brought up the rear. Mason ordered speed at 9 knots, slow, but the convoy could only move as fast as the slowest ship, an old freighter from 1918 that could barely make 8. The first day was quiet, cold, gray sea, gray sky. The ships plowed through moderate swells. The crew settled into the routine. Watch rotations, meals, maintenance. Mason barely left the bridge. He'd set up a cot in the chart room, grabbed 20-minute naps when he could, but mostly he stayed awake. Drinking coffee, watching the horizon, waiting for the U-boats. Bull Hawkins brought him breakfast on the second morning. Bacon, eggs, toast, real food. The smell filled the bridge, sizzling bacon, butter, coffee. You need to eat, Sir Bull said. Mason looked at the tray, his stomach turned. Not hungry. Sir, with respect, you can't command on coffee and willpower. Mason picked up a piece of bacon, bit into it, crispy, salty, rich. He forced himself to chew, swallow. It tasted like ashes. Thank you, Bull. Bull lingered. Sir, can I speak freely? Go ahead. You're running yourself ragged. You need sleep. Real sleep, not catnaps. Mason set down the bacon. Bull, 3 years ago, I was asleep when the torpedo hit. If I'd been awake, maybe I could have saved them. Bull's expression softened. Sir, you can't change the past. But you can sure as hell ruin the present by not taking care of yourself. Mason knew Bull was right, but knowing and doing were different things. I'll sleep when we're across, Mason said. Bull nodded, knew better than to push. Yes, sir? Below decks, Marcus Green was learning what it meant to be at sea in wartime. Bull had assigned him to the depth charge detail. Marcus's job was to load the charges, set the depth, and then roll them off the stern on command. The depth charges were 600-pound cylinders packed with TNT, set to explode at specific depths, 100 feet, 200, 300, depending on where the submarine was. If set right, the explosion crushed the U-boat's hull. If set wrong, you wasted a charge and the U-boat escaped. Bull showed Marcus how to set the detonator, how to lock the safety, how to roll the charge onto the rack. When I give the word, you release this lever, charge rolls off, sinks. Boom! U-boat dies. Understand? Marcus nodded. His hands shook a little. He'd never killed anyone. Wasn't sure he could. Bull noticed, put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Kid, those U-boats killed 1,200 sailors, sank 47 ships, sent men to the bottom who never saw it coming. You remember that when it's time. Marcus swallowed. Yes, Bull, you got family back home. My mama, 3 younger siblings, Darius, Shanice, and little Tommy. They need you to come home, so you do your you follow orders, and you come home. Deal, deal. On the third day, February 7th, the convoy entered the Black Pit. The Canadian aircraft turned back. The radio crackled with the pilot's final message. Good luck, Eagle. We'll see you on the other side. Mason acknowledged. Then the sky was empty. No planes, no protection, just ocean and clouds and the constant rolling swells. Watson approached Mason on the bridge. Sir, should we increase speed? Negative, we maintain convoy speed. But sir, the faster we cross the Black Pit, the less time the U-boats have to attack. The slower we go, the less fuel we burn. We need that fuel to hunt U-boats, Lieutenant. Speed isn't the answer, Watson wanted to argue. His academy training said different. But Mason was the captain, so Watson said, yes, sir. That night at 23:47 hours, Jimmy Rodriguez sat in the sonar room with his headphones on, eyes closed, listening to the ocean. He heard the normal sounds, ship engines, waiting, the groan of metal holes flexing. Then he heard something else, faint, rhythmic, deliberate. Jimmy opened his eyes, adjusted the gain, listened harder. It was Morse code. Through the water, hydrophone transmission. The U-boats were talking to each other. Jimmy's blood went cold. He counted the signatures. 1 EPM, 2, 5, 10, 15, 20, 22 U-boats. Jimmy grabbed the phone. Bridge sonar, contact. Multiple contacts. Mason's voice came back immediately. Report, sir, I count 22 submarine acoustic signatures. They're in a circle around us. Diameter approximately 30 miles. Mason felt ice in his stomach. Say again. 22 U-boats, sir. We walked into a trap. Mason looked at Watson. The younger officer had gone pale. Mason grabbed the intercom. General quarters. All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. The alarm rang through the ship. Men scrambled to their positions. Gun crews, damage control, engineering, everyone moving with practiced speed. Mason stood on the bridge and looked out at the dark ocean. Somewhere out there, 22 German submarines were closing in, against 3 Allied destroyers protecting 37 helpless cargo ships. The math didn't work. They were outnumbered 7-1. By any calculation, the convoy should die. But Mason wasn't going to let that happen. Not again. Not ever again. He poured himself more coffee, took a sip, let the bitter taste focus him. Then he spoke quietly to Watson. Lieutenant, tell the crew, we hold this line, no matter what. Those 37 ships make it to England, or we die trying. Watson swallowed. Yes, sir. And Lieutenant, tell them this too. American sailors don't abandon ship while good men need protecting. We stay, we fight, and we win. Watson straightened, felt something shift inside him. This was what command meant. Not following the book, following the man willing to give everything for the mission. Yes, sir. I'll tell them. At 03:47 hours on February 7th, 1943, the first torpedo hit. The explosion lit the night sky like a dying star. SS Liberty, Dawn, 12,000 tons of cargo and hope broke in half. Fire climbed 100 feet into the black sky. Metal screamed as the ship's spine snapped. Men screamed louder. Mason was on the bridge drinking his 40th cup of coffee when the world turned orange. The shockwave hit Eagle 3 seconds later. Coffee sloshed over the rim, burned his hand. He didn't notice. Watson stood frozen at the chart table, staring at the fireball reflected in the bridge windows. All hands, Mason's voice cut through the shock. Battle stations. This is not a drill, but the crew was already moving. They'd heard the explosion, felt it in their bones. Gun crews sprinted to their stations. Jimmy Rodriguez jammed his headphones on. Bull Hawkins ran aft to the depth charge racks where Marcus Green was already waiting, face pale but hands steady. The radio erupted, static and panic and death. Mayday. Mayday SS Liberty. Dawn taking water. We're hit. Second torpedo inbound. God help us. Jimmy's voice crackled through the bridge speaker. Multiple contacts, bearing 2703-10045. Sir, they're everywhere. Mason grabbed the binoculars, scanned the darkness, saw nothing but fire and smoke. and the silhouettes of merchant ships scattered like frightened sheep. How many, Mason demanded. Jimmy's voice shook. At least 8 submarines, sir. Maybe more. I can't get clean separation on the signatures. They're all around us. Watson turned to Mason. Orders, sir. Mason's mind raced. 8 U-boats attacking simultaneously. Coordinated wolfpack tactics. This wasn't random. This was planned, rehearsed. The Germans had been waiting for them. He looked at the burning Liberty Dawn, saw men jumping into the water, 60 men, maybe more, falling into 28-degree water wearing life vests that would keep them afloat just long enough to freeze to death. The radio again. Desperate now. This is Liberty Dawn. We're abandoning ship. Men in the water. Request immediate assistance. Please, we're dying. Watson looked at Mason. Sir, we have to help them. Mason said nothing. He was doing math. Terrible math, the kind of math that David Chen had taught him. The kind where some men live and some men die and you have to choose. Jimmy's voice cut in. Sir, 2 contacts bearing 095 and 110. They're moving into attack position on the convoy range 4,000 yards and closing. Mason saw it then, saw the whole picture. The Liberty Dawn wasn't the target. It was bait. The Germans had torpedoed one ship to draw the escorts away. While Eagle rescued survivors, the other U-boats would slaughter the convoy. 60 men in the water now, 2,000 men on 36 remaining ships. Save 60, lose 2,000. Save 2,000, lose 60. Mason's hands gripped the railing, knuckles white. He could hear David Chen's voice, could see the kid's face as he sank. Take care of Tom. He's got family. Commander Watson's voice. Urgent, waiting. Sir, those men need help now. Mason made the decision, the same decision he'd made 3 years ago, the one that haunted him every night, the one he was about to make again. Negative. His voice came out flat, dead. We hold position. Protect the convoy. Watson stared. Sir, I gave an order, Lieutenant. We hold position. But sir, there are men in the water. 60 men. And there are 2,000 men on those cargo ships. Mason turned on Watson. His eyes were hollow, haunted. If we break formation, the U-boats kill them all. All of them. Do you understand? Watson's face went hard. Yes, sir, I understand perfectly. The radio kept screaming. Help us, please, we're freezing. Someone help us. Mason turned away from Watson, stared at the burning Liberty Dawn, listened to the men die. 4 minutes in 28-degree water. That's what the manual said. 4 minutes from immersion to unconsciousness. Another 6 to death. He counted. 1 minute. The screams were loud, desperate. 2 minutes. The screams got weaker. Some men were already going under. 3 minutes. Only a few voices left. Calling for mothers, for anyone. 4 minutes. Silence. Just the sound of fire and waves and Eagle's engines holding position. Watson stood at the chart table. Wouldn't look at Mason. His jaw was clenched so tight it looked ready to break. On the fantail, Marcus Green gripped the depth charge rack. Tears streamed down his face. He'd heard the screams, heard them die. Bull Hawkins stood next to him, one massive hand on Marcus's shoulder. Bull's eyes were far away, back in France, back in Belleau Wood, where he'd made the same choice 25 years ago. Jimmy Rodriguez pulled off his headphones, bent over, vomited into the trash can next to his sonar station. When he put the headphones back on, his hands were shaking. Mason stood alone on the bridge, perfectly still, listening to ghosts. David Chen was there. So were the 60 men from Liberty Dawn, all of them looking at him, asking why. He had no answer, just orders, just duty, just the terrible mathematics of war. Sir Jimmy's voice snapped Mason back. Contact surface target, bearing 095, range 4 miles, fast screws. Mason grabbed the binoculars. What is it, U-boat, sir? He surfaced after firing, running on diesels. Mason felt something shift inside him. Anger, cold and sharp. One of the U-boats had gotten greedy, stayed on the surface too long, made a mistake. Full speed. Mason's voice was ice. Make turns for 32 knots. We're taking him. Watson looked up. Sir, you heard me, Lieutenant. That U-boat just killed 60 Americans. We're going to return the favor. Eagle's engines roared. The destroyer leaped forward, cutting through the swells at 32 knots. The bow crashed through waves. Salt spray sheeted over the deck. The ship vibrated with speed and fury. Range closing, Jimmy reported. 3 miles, 2.5, 2. Mason watched through the binoculars, saw the U-boat's wake, white foam in the darkness. The submarine was running, fast. But not fast enough. Range 1 mile, Jimmy's voice rose. He's diving. Repeat target is diving. Mason expected that. Clever. The U-boat commander had seen Eagle coming, crash dive to escape. But diving took time, and Mason knew exactly where he'd gone. Plot intercept core. Mason moved to the chart table. Assume target speed, 6 knots, bearing 095. Give me a firing solution. Watson worked the numbers, his academy training taking over. Pencil moving across the chart. Course to intercept is 096, sir. Range to predicted position, 6,000 yards. Very well. Come right to 096, the helmsman repeated. Right to 096I, the Eagle turned, lined up on the intercept course, racing toward where the U-boat should be, where Mason's calculations said it had to be. 2 miles from intercept, Jimmy reported. Slow to sonar speed, Mason ordered. Make turns for 22 knots. Watson relayed the command. Turns for 22 knots, I. Eagle slowed. The vibration decreased. Now Jimmy's sonar could hear clearly, could pick out the subtle sounds of a submarine trying to hide. Jimmy closed his eyes, listened. The ocean spoke to him, told him secrets. Contact. Jimmy's voice was soft, almost reverent, bearing 091. Range indefinite. He's running from us, sir. Come left to 091. The ship turned again, following the invisible prey, a deadly game of blind man's bluff played with sound and mathematics and cold steel. Contact bearing steady, Jimmy said. I've got screw noises. Single shaft, diesel electric. It's a Type 7 U-boat. Range still indefinite, sir. But he's close. Maybe 2,000 yards. They chased the U-boat for 20 minutes. The German commander was good. He knew the tricks. Changed depth, changed course, went silent. But Jimmy was better. He could hear the U-boat breathing, could hear the slight vibration of the electric motors, could hear the crew moving inside the hull. Contact dead ahead, Jimmy reported. Range 1,000 yards. He's turned, trying to slip under us. Mason saw it. The U-boat was trying to hide in Eagle's baffles, the blind spot directly behind the shed where sonar couldn't reach. Old trick, effective, but Mason had read about it. Left full rudder. Turn inside him. Left full rudder Eagle, heeled hard to port. The turn was tight, violent. Men grabbed handholds. Coffee mugs slid off tables. But the maneuver worked. The U-boat was no longer behind them. Contact, bearing port 015, Jimmy called. Range 100 yards. He's in the turn with us. Mason smiled. No teeth, just cold satisfaction. Mirror his moves. Stay on him. The two ships danced. Eagle turned. The U-boat turned. Eagle accelerated. The U-boat slowed. It was a chess match played in 3 dimensions with death as the stakes. Bearing 012, Jimmy said. Range 1,000 yards. Still closing. Keep talking to me, Jimmy. Bearing 010. Range 900. He's going hard left. Right standard rudder. The commands came faster now. The U-boat was desperate, trying everything, but Eagle matched every move. Stayed locked on, getting closer, bearing 006, range 800 yards. Contact is definite now, sir. Strong return. Very well, standby depth charges. On the fantail bull, Hawkins heard the order, looked at Marcus. You ready, kid? Marcus swallowed. Set the charges. Set them for 300 feet. Medium pattern. 6 charges. Marcus's hands moved automatically, training overriding fear. He set the detonators, locked the safeties, rolled the charges into position on the racks, each one 600 pounds of high explosive, enough to crush a submarine like a tin can. Charges ready, Bull reported over the sound-powered phone. On the bridge, Mason tracked the geometry in his head. Distance, depth, speed. The U-boat was trying to go deep, trying to get below crush depth for the charges. But he wouldn't make it in time. Bearing 004, Jimmy said. His voice was tight, excited. Range 600 yards. Sir, I've got him locked. Contact 002, range 500 yards. Contact 001, range 400 yards. Engine sounds slowing, sir. He's going dead slow. On trying to hide, won't work. Mason's voice was quiet. Contact 300 yards. Contact inside minimum sonar range. Jimmy yanked off his headphones, switched to hydrophones. Direct listening. No electronics, just ears and water and sound. Hydrophone effect very strong, sir. I can hear him. I can hear the crew moving inside. Over the screws, Jimmy shouted. The U-boat was directly below them now, trying to hide in the blind spot under Eagle's keel, exactly where Mason wanted him. Fire medium pattern, Bull pulled the release lever. 6 depth charges rolled off the stern, splashed into the water, sank into the dark. Mason counted. 5 seconds, 10, 15. The ocean exploded. 6 simultaneous detonations 300 feet down. The shockwave lifted Eagle's stern. Water erupted in massive geysers. White foam and spray shot 50 feet into the air. The sound was like the end of the world, a deep bass roar that you felt in your chest more than heard. The bridge shook. Mason grabbed the railing, waited, watched. Oil slick forming, Watson reported. Debris surfacing. Mason raised the binoculars, saw the black oil spreading across the water, saw chunks of metal, a life ring, but no bodies yet. Then something else floated up. Wooden debris, a barrel, an oil drum with German markings. Wait, Mason's eyes narrowed. That's not right. Jimmy's voice. Confused. Sir, I'm still hearing something. Faint contact, bearing 180. Moving away, Mason's stomach dropped. The debris was wrong, too much wood, too little metal, and the U-boat was still alive. It's a decoy, Mason shouted. He dumped debris. The bastard's still out there. Watson stared at the debris field. But sir, the oil, the wreckage. Fake, all fake, Mason spun to the helm. Come about bearing 180, he's running. But it was too late. The U-boat had used the explosion as cover, dumped pre-positioned debris and oil drums, made them think he was dead. And while Eagle celebrated, he'd slipped away into the dark. Jimmy tracked the fading contact. He's going deep, sir. 400 feet. 500. I'm losing him in the thermal layers. Mason slammed his fist on the console. Clever. Damn him, that was clever. Watson looked at the fake debris field. Sir, how did he... Prepared in advance, Mason's voice was grudging respect. He knew he might get depth charged, so he rigged barrels of oil and wood debris to blow out a hatch when the charges went off. Made us think we killed him. Bull's voice came over the speaker. Sir, should we pursue negative? Mason shook his head. He's too deep now, and we need to get back to the convoy. As Eagle turned away, Jimmy heard something through his hydrophones. Faint, distant, but clear. Laughter. The U-boat crew was laughing, celebrating. They'd fooled the Americans. And then a voice, speaking English, accented, mocking. Gute Nacht, Amerikaner. Good night, Americans. The transmission cut off. Mason stood on the bridge, stared at the fake debris field, felt the sting of being outsmarted. Watson approached carefully. Sir, we should report the contact to the convoy. Mason nodded slowly. Do it. Tell them we engaged a U-boat but failed to achieve a kill. Tell them the Germans are smarter than we thought. As they rejoined the convoy, Mason felt the weight of it. Not just the 60 men from Liberty Dawn, not just David Chen, but now this. Outsmarted, tricked, made a fool. Bull found him in the chart room an hour later. Brought coffee. Heard what happened, sir. Bull set the cup down. He got away. He was better than me. Mason didn't touch the coffee. I thought we had him. Thought I'd avenge those 60 men. But I was wrong. Bull sat down. Sir, can I tell you something? Go ahead, Bellow Wood. We were chasing Germans through the forest. Thought we had them cornered, but they'd set a trap. Fake retreat. When we followed, they hit us from 3 sides. Killed 15 Marines in 2 minutes. Bull leaned forward. My Lieutenant Morrison, he blamed himself. Said he should have seen it coming, should have been smarter. Drove himself crazy with it. You know what happened to him? What killed himself 3 years after the war. Put a pistol in his mouth, left a note that said, I'm sorry I wasn't good enough. Bull's eyes were hard. Don't be a Lieutenant Morrison, sir. Learn from the mistake. Get better, but don't let it eat you alive. Mason finally looked at Bull. How do I get better when they keep outsmarting me? You keep fighting, you keep learning, and you remember that war isn't about being perfect. It's about being good enough to save more than you lose. Mason picked up the coffee, took a sip. It was cold now, bitter, but he drank it anyway. That evening, the attacks came again. 4 U-boats, simultaneous torpedo launches from 4 different bearings. Coordinated, precise. Muller's work, HMS Vanguard engaged one, HMS Triumph went after another. Eagle chased a third, but the 4th torpedo hit home. SS Atlantic Hope, 8,000 tons, carrying 500 tons of penicillin and 2,000 units of blood plasma. The primary medical cargo, the whole reason for the convoy. The torpedo hit the engine room. The ship began to sink. Not fast like Liberty Dawn, slow. Running, the crew had time to abandon. Time to get into lifeboats, to row away before she went under. But the cargo went with her. 500 tons of penicillin, sinking to the bottom. Enough medicine to save 50,000 wounded soldiers. Gone. Mason watched through binoculars. Watched the Atlantic Hope slip beneath the waves. Watched the mission fail. He slammed his fist on the bridge console. Blood. He'd hit hard enough to split his knuckles. Pain. Good. Pain meant he could still feel something. No. Mason's voice broke. Not again. Watson stepped toward him. Sir, I failed, Mason spun on Watson. The mission was to protect that cargo. I failed, sir. We still have 36 ships. We can still deliver. We lost the penicillin. 50,000 men are going to die from infected wounds because I couldn't protect one ship, Commander. That's not... Get out, Mason's shout silenced the bridge. Everyone out now. The crew fled, even Watson. Left Mason alone with his rage and his ghosts and his bleeding hand. Mason stood in the empty bridge, looked at his reflection in the dark windows, saw a stranger. Hollow eyes, unshaven, uniform wrinkled. This wasn't the man Sarah had married. This was something else. Something broken. He pulled out the photograph of Sarah and the ultrasound image of the baby. David. They were going to name him David. I'm sorry, Mason whispered. I couldn't save them. I can't save anyone. He sank into the captain's chair, put his head in his hands. And for the first time in 3 years, Robert Mason cried. Bull Hawkins didn't knock, just walked into the bridge and found Commander Mason sitting in the captain's chair with his head in his hands. Blood dripped from Mason's knuckles onto the deck. Slow drops, steady, like a clock counting down to something. Bull stood there for a moment, watching. He'd seen this before. Belleau Wood, after the worst fighting, when Lieutenant Morrison had broken down after ordering a suicide charge that killed half the platoon. Morrison had sat just like this, head down, shoulders shaking, lost. Permission to speak, Commander. Mason didn't look up. Denied. Bull stepped closer. I'm speaking anyway, sir. That got Mason's head up. His eyes were red, wet, angry. I gave you an order, gunner. Yes, sir. Bull's voice was calm, steady, and I'm disobeying it. Court-martial me later. Right now, you need to hear this. Mason's jaw clenched, but he didn't order Bull out again. So Bull kept talking. Belleau Wood, June 1918. I was 18 years old, same age as Marcus. My platoon got surrounded by Germans, machine guns on 3 sides, artillery coming down. We were dead men. Bull sat down on the chart table, lit 2 cigarettes, handed one to Mason. Mason took it automatically. Inhaled. The smoke burned, cleared his head slightly. Lieutenant Morrison ordered retreat. Bull continued, but there was a kid with us, Tommy O'Brien, 17 years old, from Boston. He'd lied about his age to enlist. Got hit in the gut by machine gun fire, screaming, bleeding, dying. Bull took a long drag, exhaled slowly. I wanted to stay, wanted to carry Tommy out, die trying if I had to. He was my friend. We trained together, shipped out together. I couldn't leave him. What happened? Mason's voice was hoarse. My lieutenant grabbed me, physically dragged me away. I fought him, cursed him, called him a coward. But he was bigger and stronger, and he pulled me into the retreat. Bull's eyes went distant. Tommy died alone in those woods, screaming for his mother. I heard him for 200 yards until a German finally shot him to shut him up. Mason said nothing, just smoked. I hated Lieutenant Morrison for 20 years, Bull said. Every time I thought about Tommy O'Brien bleeding out alone, I hated that man. Hated him for making me leave, for choosing 60 lives over one. Bull stubbed out his cigarette. Then I had a son, Michael. And one day when he was 5 years old, he asked me about the war, asked if I was a hero, and I told him no. I told him I left my friend to die. But you know what I realized while I was telling him? What Lieutenant Morrison was right. Bull met Mason's eyes. If I'd stayed with Tommy, I'd be dead. And so would the 60 men who made it out. Tommy was already dead. The bullet had torn through his liver. Field surgeon told us later, even if we'd gotten him out, he wouldn't have survived an hour. Bull leaned forward. Commander, those 60 men you left in the water tonight, they were dead the moment that torpedo hit. 4 minutes in 28-degree water. You couldn't have saved them. But you saved 2,000 men on 36 ships. That's not failure, sir. That's command. Mason's voice cracked. I can hear them dying every night. David Chen, the Liberty Dawn crew. They're all there, all looking at me, asking why. And what do you tell them? I don't have an answer. Bull stood, walked to the window, looked out at the convoy, 36 ships plowing through the gray Atlantic. Thousands of men, all trusting the destroyers to keep them alive. You tell them the truth, Commander. You tell them you chose life over death. You tell them 2,000 men are going home to their families because you made the hard call. You tell them their sacrifice meant something. Bull turned back to Mason. Tommy O'Brien died so 60 Marines could live. David Chen died so you could live. Those 60 sailors died tonight so 2,000 could live. That's not murder, sir. That's war. And you don't get to feel good about it. You just get to live with it and keep going. Hal Mason looked up. His face was raw, broken. How do you keep going? Because the alternative is giving up. And if you give up, then they died for nothing. Bull's voice got hard. You think David Chen gave you his life vest so you could sit here feeling sorry for yourself? He gave it to you so you'd save other people, so you'd do what he couldn't. Mason wiped his eyes, took a shaky breath. I'm not strong enough for this. No one is, Bull said simply. But you do it anyway. You get up. You give the orders, and you save every man you can. That's all any of us can do. The bridge was quiet except for the hum of engines and the sound of waves against the hull. Finally, Mason stood. His legs were unsteady, but he stood, straightened his uniform, wiped the blood off his hand with a handkerchief. Thank you, Bull. Don't thank me yet, sir. Bull almost smiled. You still got to face the crew. They're scared. They think you're breaking. You need to show them you're not. Am I breaking? Probably. Bull shrugged. But so is everyone else in a war. The trick is breaking in the right direction, breaking open instead of breaking down. Mason walked to the bridge windows, looked at his reflection, still saw a stranger. But maybe that was okay. Maybe war changed you into someone else, someone harder, someone who could make terrible choices and live with them. He thought about Sarah, about the baby they'd named David, about going home someday and trying to explain what he'd done out here, the men he'd saved, the men he'd let die, the weight of command that never went away. And he made a decision. Get the officers, Mason said. Watson, Jimmy, the rest. I need to talk to them. Yes, sir. Bull headed for the hatch. Paused. For what it's worth, Commander, you're the best captain I've served under. And I've served under a lot. Then Bull was gone. 10 minutes later, the officers assembled on the bridge. Watson, Jimmy Rodriguez, Lieutenant Peterson from Gunnery, Ensign Clark from Damage Control. They stood at attention, waiting, wondering if their captain was about to crack completely or pull himself together. Mason faced them. His eyes were still red but clear now. Focused, gentlemen, I owe you an explanation and an apology. Sir, you don't need to. Watson started. Yes, I do. Mason cut him off. 3 years ago, I commanded a merchant ship that was torpedoed. 47 men died under my command. One of them, David Chen, gave me his life vest, told me to save someone else. And I've been trying to earn that gift ever since. Mason paused. Let that sink in. Tonight I let 60 more men die. chose 2,000 lives over 60. It was the right call, the only call. But it doesn't feel right. It feels like murder, like failure. And I broke. You all saw it. I lost control, and I'm sorry. No one spoke. But here's what I know, Mason continued. We're 48 hours from safe waters. Mueller has at least 20 U-boats left. He's hunting us, and he's good. Maybe better than me, but I'll be damned if I let him out to one more convoy ship, one more American, one more Allied sailor. Mason looked each officer in the eye. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to hunt Mueller, draw him out, kill him, and we're going to save every single ship in this convoy, not for glory, not for medals, for the men who trust us to get them home, for David Chen, for the crew of Liberty Dawn, for everyone who died believing we'd finish the job. Watson straightened. Orders, Sir Mason moved to the chart table. Spread out the tactical map. We're going to do something insane. We're going to make ourselves bait. Make Mueller think I've lost my mind, that I'm chasing ghosts. And when he comes to finish me off, we'll be waiting. Jimmy leaned in. That's risky, sir. It's the only play we have. Mason traced the convoy route. Mueller's too smart to attack the same way twice. He'll wait. Watch, look for weakness. So we'll give him one. A broken commander making mistakes. And when he takes the bait, we spring the trap. What if he doesn't bite? Peterson asked. Then we lose. Mason was blunt. But if we keep playing defense, we lose anyway. Mueller has the numbers, the position, the initiative. Our only chance is to force him into a fight on our terms. Watson studied the chart. How do we sell it? Make him believe you're really broken. We break formation. Mason pointed to a position 10 miles from the convoy. I take Eagle out here. Start hunting phantom contacts. Act erratic. You, Watson, get on the radio and try to order me back. Make it sound real. Make it sound like the crew thinks I've snapped, and the convoy HMS Vanguard tightens the screen. She can hold for 2 hours, maybe 3. That's our window. Bull spoke up from the back. What if Mueller sends a scout instead of coming himself? We kill the scout. Fast. Make Mueller angry. Angry men make mistakes. The officers looked at each other. It was crazy, reckless, the kind of plan that got people killed. But it was also brilliant, aggressive, exactly what Mueller wouldn't expect from a broken American commander. I'm in, Watson said first. Me too, Jimmy added. Peterson nodded. Hell of a plan, sir. Mason felt something shift in the room. They trusted him again. Or maybe they'd never stopped. Maybe they just needed to see him fight back. One more thing, Mason said. If this goes wrong, if I get Eagle sunk, you make sure the convoy gets through. Promise me. Sir Watson protested. Promise me, Lieutenant. That's an order. Watson's jaw worked. Then he saluted. I promise, sir. Good. Mason checked his watch. We execute at first light, 0600 hours. Get some rest, gentlemen. It's going to be a long day. The officers filed out. Only Bull remained. You really think this will work? Bull asked. No idea, Mason admitted, but it's better than waiting to die. Fair enough. Bull headed for the hatch, stopped. Commander, that was a good speech. The men needed to hear it. Did you? Bull smiled. Hell, sir, I already knew you were crazy. That's why I followed you. After Bull left, Mason stood alone on the bridge. He didn't pour coffee this time. Just stood, looking at the dark ocean, thinking about David Chen, about the 60 men from Liberty Dawn, about the choice he'd made and the choices still to come. At 0545 hours, Mason briefed the crew over the ship's intercom, told them the plan, told them it was dangerous, told them some of them might not survive, but told them it was the only way. The crew responded the way sailors always do, with gallows humor and grim determination. They'd follow their captain into hell if he asked, not because they thought he was perfect, because they knew he'd die before he abandoned them. At 0600 hours, Eagle broke formation. Mason got on the radio, made sure it was an open channel, made sure Mueller was listening. All ships, this is Eagle. I have sonar contact bearing 045. Pursuing immediately. Commodore Andrews responded right on cue. Eagle returned to formation. That's an order. Negative, Commodore. I'm finishing this. Mason injected just enough desperation into his voice. Made it sound real. Commander Mason, you are abandoning your station. Those U-boats killed my men. I'm going to kill them back. Mason cut the transmission, gave Watson a nod. The XO keyed his own mic. Commodore, this is Lieutenant Watson aboard Eagle. Commander Mason is not responding to orders. I believe he's... Watson paused for effect, not fit for command at this time. Perfect, Mason mouthed. 20 miles away in U-571, Kapitän Leutnant Heinrich Muller listened to the exchange, smiled, removed his headphones. The American commander has broken, Muller said to his executive officer. Just as I predicted, grief makes men foolish. Should we pursue Herr Kapitän? Muller considered. It could be a trap. The Americans were clever sometimes. But the radio chatter sounded genuine. The desperation, the crew losing faith in their captain. That couldn't be faked easily. Send U-432, Muller ordered. Tell Becker to scout the American destroyer. Report back. Do not engage unless victory is certain. Jawohl, Herr Kapitän. Muller turned to his charts, studied the convoy position. With the American destroyer gone, the convoy was vulnerable. HMS Vanguard couldn't cover that much ocean alone. He could strike, kill 3, maybe 4 ships before they responded. But something nagged at him. Commander Mason hadn't survived this long by being stupid. The man was haunted, yes. Broken, maybe, but not incompetent. Muller decided to wait, let Becker confirm the situation, then he'd decide. Aboard Eagle, Mason tracked time. The bait was set. Now came the hard part, waiting. Jimmy sat at his sonar station, headphones on, listening. At 0823 hours, he heard it. Contact. Single submarine. Bearing 045, range 3 miles. Fast approach. Mason's pulse quickened. They had sent a scout, just like Bull predicted. Now they had to kill it. Fast, before it could report back. Make your approach silent, Mason ordered. We don't want to spook him. Eagle glided through the water at 15 knots. Quiet, steady. The U-boat was doing 12 knots submerged. Closing the distance. Trying to get a look at the crazy American destroyer. Range 2 miles, Jimmy reported. 1 mile, target is slowing. Coming to periscope depth. The U-boat commander was being cautious. Smart. He'd surfaced just enough to take a peek through the periscope. Confirm what the radio chatter suggested. Then dive and run, but he wouldn't get the chance. Range 800 yards, Jimmy said. He's steady. Periscope depth. Stand by, Mason said calmly. 600 yards, 400 yards. Fire solution ready, Watson reported. Eagle had crept to within 300 yards before the U-boat realized the danger. Jimmy heard the sudden cavitation of screws reversing. Emergency dive. The submarine trying to escape. Too late. Fire full pattern, Mason barked. 10 depth charges rolled off the stern, fell into the water, sank. The U-boat dove hard, trying to get below the explosion depth, but the charges were already falling, already reaching detonation depth. The ocean erupted. 10 massive explosions. The biggest barrage Eagle had ever fired. The shockwave was so powerful it lifted the destroyer's stern out of the water. Water geysered 100 feet high. The sound rolled across the ocean like thunder. When the spray cleared, debris floated everywhere. Metal, oil, wood, bodies, hull collapse, Jimmy confirmed. Multiple fractures. He's breaking up. Mason watched the debris field through binoculars. Saw a young German sailor floating face down. Couldn't have been more than 20. Same age David Chen would have been. May God have mercy on them, Mason said quietly. Bull's voice from the fantail. Debris confirms kill, sir. U-432 is destroyed. 20 miles away, Muller heard the explosion through his hydrophones. Waited for Becker's report. Waited. Nothing. Becker is not responding, his executive officer reported. I believe he's lost. Muller's face went hard, cold. He removed his cap, set it on the chart table. Becker had been his best scout, his friend, and the American had killed him. Muller realized then what had happened. The radio chatter, the apparent breakdown, it had all been theater. Commander Mason wasn't broken. He was hunting. A smile crossed Muller's face. Genuine, appreciative. This American was worthy. Very clever, Commander Mason, Muller said to the empty control room. You killed Becker. Made me think you were weak. But you're not. You're dangerous. Mueller put his cap back on. Made his decision. All boats, this is Wolfpack leader. Break off convoy attack. New target USES Eagle. We hunt the hunter. Herr Capitan attacking a destroyer is... The executive officer hesitated. Is what Mueller's eyes were ice. Is honorable. This American commander challenges me personally. He killed my friend. So I will kill him. Myself. Not the pack. Me. Mueller got on the radio, spoke in English, made sure Mason was listening. Commander Mason, I know you hear me. You killed Becker. He was a good man. My friend. For this, I will sink your ship personally. Not my pack, just me. 571 against Eagle. Hunter against Hunter. Do you accept? Mason picked up the radio, keyed the mic. His voice was steady, calm. Capitan Mueller, I accept your challenge. Come ahead. I'll be waiting. Excellent. Mueller sounded pleased. One of us will not see tomorrow, Commander. I look forward to discovering which. The radio clicked off. Watson looked at Mason. Sir, this is... He paused. This is insane, probably. Mason smiled. First time in days. But it gets the other U-boats off the convoy. Mueller's ego won't let his pack interfere. It's just him and us now. And if we lose, then Vanguard gets the convoy through. Mason's smile faded. But we're not going to lose. How can you be sure? Because I have something to fight for. Mason looked at the photograph of Sarah. Mueller's fighting for pride. I'm fighting to go home. That makes all the difference. The crew made ready, guns loaded, depth charges positioned, damage control teams standing by. Everyone knew this was it, the final fight. Winner lived. Loser died. No middle ground. Marcus stood at his station with Bull. The kid's hands didn't shake anymore. His eyes were hard, focused. War had aged him, turned him from boy to man in 4 days. You scared? Bull asked, terrified. Marcus smiled. But I'm ready. Good. Bull clapped him on the shoulder. Remember, fear keeps you alive. Use it. At 16:15 hours, Jimmy picked up U-571 on sonar. Range 8 miles, closing steady at 8 knots. Mueller wasn't hiding, wasn't sneaking. He was coming straight on, confident, arrogant. Mason stood on the bridge, hands steady now, mind clear. All the ghosts were still there. David Chen, the Liberty Dawn crew. But they weren't dragging him down anymore. They were lifting him up, reminding him what he fought for. He thought about Sarah, about never seeing his son, about dying in the cold Atlantic. Then he thought about the 2,000 men in the convoy counting on him, and about Marcus and Jimmy and Bull and Watson, about every sailor who trusted him to make the right call. And Robert Mason decided he wasn't going to die today. All hands, this is the captain, Mason's voice carried through every speaker on the ship. In a few minutes, we engage a German U-boat, the best U-boat commander in their navy. He's sunk 47 ships, killed 1,200 men. He's good. He's experienced. He's confident. Mason paused. But we're better. We're Americans. We fight for each other, for our families, for every man who's counting on us to come home. And we don't quit. Ever. So battle stations, stay sharp, and let's send this Nazi bastard to hell. The crew roared. A primal sound. Warriors ready for battle. Mason looked at Watson. You have the con if I fall. I won't need it, sir. Watson's voice was firm. We're all going home. Mason nodded. Then let's finish this. At 16:47 hours, U-571 fired the first torpedo. Jimmy heard it before the sonar picked it up. Torpedo in the water bearing 180 acoustic homing. The T-5 Zonkönig, the newest German torpedo, it homed in on propeller noise, chased ships like a bloodhound, and Eagle's screws were screaming at 22 knots. Cut engines, Mason's order was instant. All stop, deploy Foxer. The ship went silent, dead in the water. The sudden stop threw men forward. Coffee cups crashed. But the Foxer device deployed, a noisemaker towed behind the ship on a cable. Clanging, banging, making more noise than Eagle's engines. The torpedo heard it, turned, chased the louder target. Boom! The explosion was 200 yards astern, close enough to feel, far enough to survive. Water erupted, rained back down on the fantail. Marcus got soaked, but he was grinning. They'd fooled it, hooded. Muller's voice came over the radio, impressed despite himself. You know about the Zaunkönig? Well done, Commander. But I have more. Mason keyed the mic. So do I, Captain. So do I. Then let us see who runs out first. The duel began in earnest. U-571 dove to 400 feet, silent running. Creeping around Eagle into a circle, looking for the perfect shot angle. Muller was patient, methodical. He'd done this 47 times before, but Mason was learning, adapting. Every trick Muller tried, Mason countered. Every feint, every false bearing, every attempt to slip into Eagle's baffles. Mason anticipated. Jimmy was the key. His ears, his gift. He could hear U-571 breathing, could track Muller's every move. Bearing 270, Jimmy whispered. Depth 380, speed 4 knots. He's trying to get behind us again. Come right to 270, match his bearing. Eagle turned, slowly, quietly, staying nose to nose with the submarine, denying Muller the angle he needed. This went on for 30 minutes. A chess match in slow motion. Two masters testing each other, neither willing to make a mistake. Then Muller changed tactics. He's surfacing. Jimmy's voice rose. Coming up fast, Mason understood immediately. Muller was going to fight on the surface, use his deck gun. Force Eagle into a gun battle where the destroyer's bigger guns would eventually win. But Muller had one advantage. He could dive at any moment. Eagle couldn't. All guns target. Submarine Mason grabbed the 1MC. Stand by to fire on my command, you. 571 broke the surface 800 yards off the port bow, water cascading off her hull. The conning tower hatch flew open. Men scrambled out. The deck gun crew, moving fast, trained. But Eagle was faster. Fire, fire, fire. All 5 5-inch guns opened up. The noise was deafening. The muzzle flashes lit the ocean. Shells screamed across the water at 2,500 feet per second. The first salvo missed, short, splashes 50 yards ahead of U-571. The second salvo hit. One shell struck the conning tower, exploded. Metal fragments flew. 2 German sailors went down. A third staggered, fell into the sea. Another shell hit the deck gun. Direct hit. The gun exploded, killed the entire crew. 5 men gone in an instant, but Muller's men were brave, disciplined. Another crew scrambled up from below, tried to man the ruined gun. Eagle's third salvo ended that. 3 shells hit U-571 amidships, punched through the pressure hull. Water flooded in. The submarine began to list. Dive, dive, Muller screamed the order. U-571 crash dived. Emergency descent. Men fell down the ladder into the control room. The hatch slammed shut, but water was already inside. The boat was wounded. Jimmy tracked them down. He's diving, sir, but he's trailing oil. I can hear flooding. We hurt him bad. Mason felt no satisfaction. Just cold calculation. He's wounded. He'll try one desperate move. What move, Watson asked. The same one I would. Mason studied the tactical display. He'll find a thermal layer. Hide. Wait for us to pass over. Then fire everything he has left. How do we counter that? We don't pass over. Mason's eyes were hard. We wait him out. Sooner or later he has to surface. The flooding will force him up, and when he does, we kill him. But sir, he could escape. Head for deep water. No, Mason shook his head. Muller's not running. His pride won't let him. He'll surface. Fight to the end. That's who he is. Mason was right. 15 minutes later, U-571 surfaced 600 yards away. Emergency surface, bow first. This submarine rocketed out of the water like a breaching whale. Fell back. Crashed down. The boat was dying, taking on water faster than the pumps could handle. Muller had one choice. Fight or surrender. He chose fight. Fire all forward tubes. Muller's voice was calm. Accept death. 4 torpedoes. Everything we have. Fire. 4 T-5 acoustic torpedoes launched, all homing on Eagle's position. Muller's last throw of the dice. Jimmy heard them coming. 4 torpedoes, multiple bearings. Sir, they're all around us. Mason had seconds. 4 torpedoes, 4 directions. No way to dodge them all. Unless All back emergency. Full reverse deploy. Every Foxer we have. Eagle's engines screamed in reverse. The ship shuddered, started moving backward. The 4 Foxers deployed, clanging, screaming, making noise in 4 different directions. The torpedoes heard, got confused. Each one chased a different Foxer. Locked on. Accelerated. Boom, 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 boom. 4 explosions. 4 geysers of water. All around Eagle. Close. So close, the ship rocked from the shockwaves. But not one hit. The ocean went quiet. U-571 was out of torpedoes. Out of time. Out of options. The submarine was settling lower in the water, sinking. Mueller knew it. He climbed to the conning tower, stood in the open air, looked across the water at Eagle, saw Commander Mason on the bridge. Their eyes met. 2 warriors. Respect. Mueller picked up a signal lamp, flashed Morse code. Well fought, Commander. You are worthy. Mason picked up his own lamp, flashed back. Abandoned ship, Capitaine. I will rescue your crew. Mueller smiled, shook his head, flashed again. A captain goes down with his ship. You understand this. Mason did. He flashed one more message. God have mercy on you. Mueller's final message was simple. Auf Wiedersehen. The German captain climbed down into the conning tower, sealed the hatch from inside, chose to die with his boat rather than surrender. U-571 sank stern first, slow, dignified, like a dying animal. The bow rose higher, higher, then slipped beneath the waves. 60 seconds later, the hull collapsed at 900 feet. The sound echoed across the ocean, a deep final crunch, then silence. Hull collapse confirmed, Jimmy said quietly. U-571 is destroyed. The bridge was silent. No one cheered. They just watched a brave man die. Enemy or not, there was something tragic about it. Sir Watson said, I'm picking up survivors. 5 men in the water. Mason didn't hesitate. Lower rescue boat. Bring them aboard. Marcus and Bull took the rescue boat, found 5 German sailors floating in oil and debris. Young men, scared, cold. Marcus reached down, grabbed the first one's hand, pulled him into the boat. The German looked at Marcus. Black skin, American uniform. The kid probably expected to be shot. Instead, Marcus wrapped a blanket around him. You're safe now, Marcus said. The German started crying, not from pain, from shock. The Americans were saving them. All 5 Germans were brought aboard Eagle, taken to the mess deck, given hot coffee, dry clothes. Bull brought them bacon from the galley. Real food. The Germans stared at it like they'd never seen anything like it. One of them spoke English, asked Bull, Why are you feeding us? Bull shrugged. Because you're hungry, and the war's over for you. The Jarian shook his head. Couldn't understand. We tried to kill you. Yeah, Bull sat down across from him. And we killed you back, but you lost, so now you're prisoners. And we don't starve prisoners. That's not who we are. The German took a bite of bacon, started crying again. Bull pretended not to notice. On the bridge, Mason reported to Commodore Andrews. Convoy, this is Eagle. U-571 is destroyed. Capitaine Mueller is dead. The wolf pack is broken. Repeat, the wolf pack is broken. Andrews' voice came back, emotion thick. Well done, Eagle. Well done, the convoy is clear. We're through the black pit. Mason closed his eyes, let out a breath he'd been holding for 4 days. It was over. They'd made it. Watson approached, offered his hand. Congratulations, sir. You did it. Mason shook his hand. We did it, Lieutenant, all of us. The crew celebrated quietly, too exhausted for anything more. They'd survived. That was enough. Mason walked to his cabin, sat at the desk, picked up a pen, started to write. Dear Sarah, I'm coming home. We lost ships, lost men, but we saved 36 out of 37. 2,000 sailors are going home because of what we did here. I'm not the same man who left. I've seen things, done things. I carry ghosts now. David Chen, 60 men from Liberty Dawn, German sailors. They'll be with me forever, but I'm coming home. To you, to our son, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the gift David Chen gave me. I love you. Always. Robert. 3 days later, February 10th, 1943, Convoy HX-237 arrived in Liverpool. 36 merchant ships, 2,000 men alive. The cargo offloaded, ammunition, food, plasma, not the penicillin they'd hoped for, but enough to keep the war effort going. Mason stood on the dock, watching his crew disembark. They looked older, harder, but alive. Bull found him, shook his hand. "It's been an honor, sir." "The honor's mine, Bull." Mason meant it. Marcus came next. Still looked young, but his eyes were old now. Seen too much too soon. "I'm putting you in for promotion," Mason said. "Petty officer, 3rd class." Marcus nodded. "Thank you, sir." Then quietly I wrote that letter to my mama. Told her everything. Told her I'm proud to serve. Good. Mason put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "She should be proud of you." Watson was last. Saluted. "Sir, I learned more in 4 days with you than 4 years at Annapolis. You'll make a fine captain someday, Lieutenant. Just remember, command isn't about being right. It's about making the hard call and living with it." "I'll remember, sir." Mason walked to the transit office, found a phone, called home. The line rang 3 times, then Sarah's voice. "Hello, Sarah." Mason's voice broke. "It's me. I'm in Liverpool. I'm safe." Sarah started crying. "Oh, God, Robert, I was so worried. I'm sorry. I couldn't call sooner. But I'm okay. We made it. When are you coming home?" "Soon." Mason looked out at the gray Liverpool sky. "A few more weeks, some debriefing, then I'm done with this tour. Coming home for good." "Good." Sarah's voice was fierce. "Because you're going to meet your son. I had him yesterday. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Perfect." Mason couldn't speak, just held the phone, tears streaming down his face. "What did you name him?" he finally managed. "David." Sarah's voice was soft. "David Chen Mason, like we agreed. That's perfect. That's just perfect." They talked for an hour, about the baby, about home, about the future. When Mason finally hung up, he felt lighter. The ghosts were still there, but they didn't weigh as much. He walked outside, found Bull smoking on the dock. "Heard you're a father," Bull said. "Congratulations." "Thanks." Mason bummed a cigarette, lit it. They smoked in silence for a while. "You ever wonder if it was worth it?" Mason asked. "All the death, all the choices, every day." Bull blew smoke. "But then I think about the men who made it home, the families that got their sons and husbands back. And I figure, yeah, it was worth it." Mason nodded, looked at the convoy ships, 36 out of 37, not perfect, but good enough to live with, 30 years later. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 1973, a small diner off Route 1. Retired Admiral Robert Mason sat in a booth. 72 years old now. White hair, weathered face, but the same eyes, still carrying ghosts. Across from him sat an old German man, 68, white hair, thin, one arm missing below the elbow. His name was Klaus Schneider. He'd been 19 years old when Eagle pulled him out of the Atlantic. One of the 5 survivors from U-571. They'd been meeting once a year for the past 5 years, ever since Klaus had tracked down Mason through naval records. Wanted to thank the man who'd saved his life. "I still have nightmares," Klaus said in accented English. "About the sinking, about Kapitän Muller staying aboard. He was a good man, Commander. He didn't deserve to die. No one deserves to die in war," Mason said. "But he made his choice. Died with honor." Klaus nodded, sipped his coffee. "You could have left us in the water. No one would have blamed you." Mason smiled. "My country would have. We don't leave men to die. Even enemies. That's what makes us different." "I know." Klaus's eyes were wet. "That's why I moved to America. 1950, became a citizen. Raised my children here. Because that day when you pulled me from the ocean and gave me bacon and coffee, I understood what America meant. What's that some things are more important than winning?" Klaus met Mason's eyes. "Decency, mercy, treating your enemy like a human being. Those are the things that last after war's end." Mason thought about David Chen, about Bull's speech, about the 60 men from Liberty Dawn, about Mueller going down with his ship, about all of it. "A lot of good men died so we could sit here today," Mason said. "Yes." Klaus raised his coffee cup. "To the fallen, all of them, American and German. To the fallen." Mason raised his cup. They clinked them together, drank. Outside, the New Hampshire winter was cold, snow falling, but inside the diner, two old warriors sat in warmth. Once enemies, now friends, both carrying ghosts, both grateful to be alive. Mason looked at the photograph he always carried. Sarah had died 2 years ago. Cancer. But his son David was 30 now, a Navy chaplain, serving on a destroyer, carrying on the tradition. David Chen would have been proud, Mason thought. Then he realized David Chen was proud, wherever he was, whatever came after death. David Chen saw what his sacrifice had created, a man who valued every life, who fought not just to win, but to save. And that Mason understood finally, and after 30 years was worth dying for. The waitress brought more coffee. Black, no sugar, no cream. Mason thanked her, took a sip, let the bitter taste anchor him one more time. Klaus smiled. You still drink it that way? Always. Mason smiled back. A real sailor drinks his coffee black. Tastes the ocean that way. They sat there for hours, talking, remembering. Two old men at the end of their stories. But the stories mattered. They'd lived them, survived them, and in surviving proved that decency and honor and mercy weren't weaknesses. They were what separated humans from monsters. That was the lesson. The only lesson that mattered. And in a small diner in New Hampshire, two old warriors kept that lesson alive. For as long as they drew breath, for as long as memory lasted, for David Chen, for Muller, for the 60 from Liberty Dawn, for all the ghosts, they remembered. And that was enough.